Okay, so this is lecture 1B, and we are continuing our talk on talents and gifts. We slightly touched base on talents and gift in lecture 1A, but I really wanted to get into it in a separate lecture. I want to make sure that you did take the questionnaire first before listening to this lecture. I really want you to get your scores in before we actually discover what your highest scores are. And if you've already done it, just go ahead and just kind of put a little star next to the one or circle the letter which have the highest scores in them. All right, so let's get into talents and gifts. A talent or skill is not your purpose and it is not a calling, but they can often lead to that purpose or that calling. These are God-given natural abilities that we have that are in us. I was taught 3 ways on how to discover the talents that you have, because a lot of times we're like, well, there's only one thing I can do, or I can't really do anything. So the first way that you can discover your talents is making a list of things that you love doing. Let's look at the apostles from the Bible, or the disciples. After Jesus died, he gave them the commandment to go out into the world and preach the gospel. But the problem with this was that a lot of people, a lot of governments, they did not want the gospel of Jesus Christ to be spread. They suffered a lot for it. Acts 5:40-41 says, "When they had called for the apostles and beaten them, they commanded that they should not speak in the name of Jesus and let them go. So they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name." 2 Corinthians 3:5, "Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think of anything as being from ourselves, but our sufficiency is from God." On activity 1B, you'll see a space where you can write down, or just grab a piece of paper, and write down at least 7 to 10 things that you love doing. Now, this doesn't have to be something church related. This doesn't have to be super specific to a ministry that you want to be in. No, it's just write down anything that you love to do. Anything at all. And I'll give you some of my examples. I love dancing. Love it. I love crocheting. I make little hats and little plush toys for my nieces and nephews. I love it. I can spend hours and hours doing it. I love sewing. I love video editing. That's no surprise there. I love writing. Again, no surprise. Love baking. And I love reading. So go ahead and make a list of things that you absolutely love to do. The second way how to discover your talents is natural born talents. Now, these are things that you may not consider talents. What's the big deal about being able to do this? What's the big deal about knowing how to do that? 1 Corinthians 2:11 says, "For what man knows the things of a man except the spirit of the man which is in him? Even so, no one knows the things of God except the Spirit of God." Don't let anyone try to tell you you're not good at something. This is like, you know yourself. No one else, no other man, no other woman can tell you what you are and what you aren't. And this comes from personality. You have the first one that comes from skill. This next one comes from personality. These are things that you're just naturally good at. And I'll give you some of my examples. I am naturally good at organizing things. I don't like seeing messiness, and it bothers me when things aren't perfectly in little containers. I love organizing. I'm naturally very good at planning. I am not a spontaneous person. Everything has to be planned out, and there has to be a checklist for everything. I am amazing at planning. I'm also very good at teaching, and very good at teaching children, for that matter. I don't know. I find it very easy. Sometimes I see other people working with children and getting frustrated and getting annoyed, and I'm like, this is like the easiest thing in the world. How could you not know how to work with children? But it's not an easy thing. It's not something everyone can do. I'm also freakishly good at training dogs. And again, like I said, it doesn't have to be super ministry. It's just whatever you're naturally good at. What are you naturally good at? So go ahead and write a few of yours down. And the third way how to find your talents is writing things down that frustrate you, that bother you, or that upset you. You know, you think of Jesus with the Pharisees. He was always bothered by the hypocrisy and the just superiority that they had. He was also very frustrated when he went into the temple and he saw everybody selling different sacrifices and making money off of the things of the temple. Matthew 21, verse 14 and 13. Then Jesus went into the temple of God and drove out all those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it into a den of thieves." Now you have the things that you love that come from skill, the things that you're naturally good at that comes from your personality, and the things that frustrate you, bother you, or upset you come from your heart. God kind of gives you this burden to want to make something better. And you look at other people's like, how does this not bother you? Me and my sister have this thing where sometimes we look at each other and we're just like, care, and we're trying to like express our frustrations towards something. And for her, mostly, it's because she's amazing at backdrops and doing and designing. So when she sees somebody that just kind of slaps a background together for a church event, it frustrates her and it bothers her. She's like, no, you have to care. You got to put love into it. Like, how can you just throw it up there? It means a lot to her, and to me, it means absolutely nothing. I'm like, that's pretty, because I don't do that. That's not my thing. To me, I get frustrated when I see, I don't want to say bad dances. It doesn't matter if you have all the talent in the world and all the education in the world. If you don't dance with all your heart on an altar, if you don't give 1,000% of your energy and of yourself, it's just, it bothers me. And it's just kind of like, how could you not? Like, God has given everything for you and died and suffered on the cross for you, and you can't even dance full out for 2.5 minutes. It's too much work for you, and that always bothers me. Another thing I don't like is ugly costumes. Now, this doesn't have to do with just dance. I also dance at a Christian theater. In a lot of occasions, actually, they will give you a costume to wear because they're very specific about what kind of costume you have to wear. Other times, we actually have the liberty to make our own costume, and I always take that liberty. If I have the opportunity to make a costume, I will make it. I love sewing and I love making things, so I'm all excited about making a costume, and I like doing the research behind it and finding things and figuring things out. So when I see other people that just slap together whatever they have at home, and and I go back to the whole like care, like put love into your costume, like you're wearing it and people are watching you, and you're trying to transport them back into this time period so that you can minister to them, and you just slapping whatever clothes you just happen to find. Garments are a little harder. I understand that because they can be very expensive, but still there's a lot of very inexpensive and budget-friendly options that still look nice. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's really expensive garments that you can find online that are kind of ugly. And those bother me too, because it's like you put no effort into designing this and it's like $60, and like, I'm not gonna pay for that. That's ugly. I don't want to wear that. It's like when I watch movies that have bad costume design, it bothers me. I'm like, what is that? Did you not do any research? It bothers me. I don't like when people underestimate the work that is involved in something. I don't like when people dismiss the work that requires to know how to dance. That bothers me. I don't like when people dismiss the work that's involved in making a video or making a dress. Like sometimes I'll make a dress for myself or an item of clothing that I'll sew for myself. And look, I'm not a professional tailor. I can do basic things. So it takes me a very long time to make a dress. And people are just like, oh, can you make me one by like next week? I'm like, no. Since I like to crochet, I make these like 2 feet large plush toys. And someone had asked me if I can make 20 of them in like a couple months. And I'm like, no. So go ahead and write down some of the things that frustrate you on the worksheet. And like I said, it doesn't have to be super ministry related. These talents, these things that come to you, these things that you have in your heart, in your personality, that you're skillful at doing, these things will lead you to your calling. Now, talents are something that you're born with. There are things that you love doing, there's things that you're naturally good at doing, and things that frustrate you. Those are things you're born with. Those are part of who you are. They come with you. They're kind of a package deal. Gifts are given by God. In 1 Corinthians 7:7, it says, "For I wish that all men were even as I myself, but each one has his own gift from God, one in this manner and another in that." Revelation 17:17, "For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled." Philippians 2:13, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure." So skill is doing it well, but skill and talent won't achieve anything on its own. We need the gifts of the Holy Spirit. That's what's going to help us get to our calling. That is what's going to drive our purpose and our calling in our life. A gift is a tool used to minister to others, whether it's an ongoing ministry or it's kind of a spontaneous situation that's needed at the church. Gifts are not for our benefit. They are for the benefit of others. We are blessed to be a blessing. 1 Peter 4:10 says, "As each one has received a gift, minister it to one another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God." Talents are inherited, they're genetic, they're nurtured through time. Gifts are received. The talents you have, you get when you're born. But the gifts that you have, you get when you're born again. The talents will make a way and prepare you to receive your gifts and fulfill your purpose. You think about the 10 virgins in the Bible. You have the 5 that had the oil and 5 that didn't. And essentially, this is about the returning of Jesus. But you can also use this to apply it to preparation. In this parable, 5 virgins had oil and 5 did not. And they were waiting for the bridegroom. So then the 5 that didn't have any oil in their lamps, they went to the other 5. They're like, hey, just give us some of your oil so that we can have some, because it's late at night and, we didn't prepare in time, and just let us mooch off of you guys because we didn't care enough to prepare. And the other 5 were like, no, because if we give you some of what we have, then our lamps are going to go out and we're not going to know when the bridegroom gets here because it's going to be too dark for us to know. We're not going to be able to endure the night. So they're like, fine, right? And those type of people, they're like, just let me ride the coattails of whatever ministry you have so that I don't actually have to do any work. I know some of those people. I'm sure you know some of those people. Some of those people are coming to mind. Hopefully that you're not one of those people. So what happened was the 5 that didn't have any oil in their lamps, they went out in the middle of the night trying to find oil for their lamps. And they obviously couldn't find any because everything's closed or everyone's asleep. And by the time they got oil for their lamps and they went back to the house, the other 5 virgins were gone because the bridegroom had come in the middle of the night while they were out trying to do last minute things. And the 5 that were ready went with the bridegroom. Now, again, like I said, this is essentially about the return of Jesus and being spiritually prepared for when he comes, but really preparation in general. When opportunity knocks at the door, it's too late to start preparing. You can't wait until you have a leadership position to take a technique class, to learn and take courses or go to conferences about dance ministry. That doesn't make any sense. Once you're in that leadership position, is because you're ready to lead those that don't know what they're doing. The blind can't lead the blind. So knowing your talents is going to help you figure out what your gifts are so that you can nurture your talents, grow your gifts, so that when your time comes and God calls you like, hey, I need you now, you're like, okay, wait, no, let me prepare first and learn what I need to do now that I'm called. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Then God's going to be like, well, if you're not ready, I'm going to move on to the next person that is ready because I need this to get done now, because it's on God's timing, not on our timing, not when we feel like we're ready. It is when God says, go, and you're either ready or you're not ready. You're either prepared and have everything down or you're not. The scriptures give us the sort of list of spiritual gifts that come from the Holy Spirit. We look at Romans 12, 6-8. It says, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching, he who exhorts in exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. Then we have some more spiritual gifts here in Corinthians 12, 7-11. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. See, here it's talking about how it's not just for your benefit, it's for everyone's benefit, for everybody else's benefit. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healings of the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. You skip down to verse 28. It says, and God has appointed these in the churches, first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, after that miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, administration, variety of tongues. We go over to Ephesians 4:11, and it says, and he himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers. Now, some of these are repeated throughout the verses. Through the lists that are given, we get new revelations of different types of gifts.